So we have the new moon in Gemini, and Gemini, just from the archetype standpoint, is the opposite side of Sagittarius. So we have Gemini and the Sagittarius energy band. And so just the archetype of Gemini is one of communication, it's one of logic, it's one of understanding things, it's one of gathering different experiences. So if you think of the natural zodiac where you have Aries, which starts, it begins something, and then you have Taurus, which it takes whatever has been started and then grounds it and says, okay, I'm going to solidify this thing, ground it into the reality. Then you have the third archetype, Gemini, which is, well, now I want to go out and explore. I want to conversate with people. I want to understand their perspectives. I want to try different things. And so Gemini, being the twins, is often it's trying two different things, or almost like splitting your energy. And I'm going to try this thing, and I'm going to try this thing, or I'm going to do two things at once, can be part of Gemini energy. But really, the archetype of Gemini, thinking about it from the energy band perspective, with the other end being Sagittarius is forming a belief system or having a certain way that you view reality that helps you stay calm and stay centered and know what's going on. And the Gemini side of this is the taking in information. It's what I just talked about, gathering different points of view. And so you're taking from Gemini and you're adding to Sagittarius. And so thinking of it from the Sagittarius to Gemini perspective, it's like having certain beliefs or a certain reality or a certain structure that gets created in Sagittarius. The Gemini side says, well, where is this not helpful or accurate or serving me? I'm going to go have some different experiences. I'm going to grab from different books, from different videos, from different people, and I'm going to take in that information to see if I can adjust the Sagittarius side of things for myself. How can I modify this, or where is it no longer serving me anymore? Or where am I attached to a belief that is just simply not true anymore? Maybe it served me for a certain period of time, but now I understand things a little bit differently. So we have this new moon, so it's a seed energy in the sign of Gemini. And so what I feel here is more so the experience part, different experiences, taking in different data, is the seed energy that I feel here with this new moon in Gemini. So with that, let's flip over to the chart and we'll take a look at the energies. So we have the new moon in Gemini, which is taking place on June 6th at 5:38 a.m. here in the Pacific Northwest PST. So here's the representation of that new moon. And one of the first things, it wasn't the first thing, but one of the things that I noticed here with this new moon in Gemini is that the moon is out of bounds. And so it may be difficult to see here, but this on the right-hand side of the graphic is a declination chart. And so any planetary body that's above this dotted line right here is considered out of bounds. And so out of bounds simply means out of bounds. It means that it's something outside of normal reality. So when you combine, or when I combine this new moon in Gemini with it being out of bounds, I think of things slipping out of your mouth where you're like, where did that come from, right? It's just one example of being out of bounds. Out of bounds can also be things that come into your awareness, conversations, information, teachings, ways of behaving, ways of acting that come out of the blue, things that are, you're like, wow, I didn't see that coming, or wow, that information is really interesting and it's really accurate for what's going on for me right now. That type of energy is symbolized, or that's part of like out of bounds energy, stuff out of the blue, stuff out of the norm. So we have this new moon in Gemini, which is ruled by Mercury, which Mercury is also in the sign of Gemini. So we have Gemini stamped all over it. All of the things that I talked about at the top of this reading apply. And so the aspects here, the one that jumped out to me the most was the supportive aspects to the nodes of the moon. So we have a trine, we have a sextile to the north and the south nodes of the moon. And so this new moon is working in conjunction with the Aries and the Libra energies. And so when we talk about Aries and Libra, Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. It represents leadership. It represents going off and doing this thing. It represents newness. It represents, from an evolutionary astrology perspective, it's separating from the womb to have your own unique experience here on this planet. So with that North Node energy and being supportive of that, and there's also a septile aspect to Eris, this Gemini combined with the Aries energy, so it's got the mental component, it's got the communication component, and that North Node is up there with Chiron, Eris, and Mars is still hanging out. So it's kind of a wide conjunction, 13 degrees for the North Node, 22 degrees for Chiron, but that energy is still part of the Aries archetype. And so when I looked at this, there's intensity there, and there's been intensity there with this North Node. When you talk about Chiron being the wounded healer, wounds, just the archetype, or not the archetype, but the energy of wounds, meaning it depends on where you're at in terms of the spectrum and how you would experience that, but it could be old wounds coming to the surface. It could be you stepping into more of a healing role, and how that looks for each individual is going to be different. You also have Eris there, and Eris, the moniker that's put on Eris is strife and discord. But the underlying purpose of Eris and the symbolism of Eris is to get to the core of who you are and how you want to express yourself. And so when we experience things like strife and discord, how are you receiving that? How are you processing it? How are you using it? How are you working with it? And so the perspective is really important, especially when it comes to Chiron and Eris, is when things are coming up for you, or you're having experiences, or you're communicating with other people, Libra, Gemini. And there's these moments where you have these heightened emotions, or you feel this tension within your body, or I think of when we get triggered or activated is even a better word for it, where you have a conversation with somebody or something comes up within you and you feel your body tense up. It's like the tap from your higher self saying, hey, can you look at this? We want you to see something here. And so instead of being reactive, strife and discord with Eris, instead of being reactive and lashing out, and it's almost like pushing up against whatever's happening, it's being able to recognize when you feel that strong emotion, or you feel like you want to punch somebody in the face, or you get tensed up and you get locked up and you feel yourself shutting down. It's being able to step back and being like, okay, I understand where I'm at this period of time. While I'm in this space, it's not a good idea to try to figure it out or to try to have a conversation or to try to understand things. It's really just a matter of being the observer and understanding where you're at and allowing some space and time for you to get back to a place where you're more calm and you're more centered. You're not constricted, your muscles aren't tight, you don't want to rip somebody's face off, you're back to a neutral place. Then you have more space energetically to be able to observe and to be able to examine and to be able to contemplate Gemini, be able to understand what is this showing you about yourself. And so it could mean, like I'm getting drawn to this Mars in Aries, that it means that you need to go off in a different direction. You need to make different choices. You may need to do something that you typically wouldn't do. It's something outside of your comfort zone, which could mean anything. It could mean separating from people, environments, situations, that type of things. Or it could simply mean that the belief systems, Gemini, the way you've logically explained things up until this point, maybe that is shifting and it puts you off into another direction, can be part of this. Because remember, this is a supportive aspect here to this new moon. And again, it's seed energy, so it's new. Aries energy. It's not that it's a full moon signature where something could really be in your face. This is more of seed energy. And then we have the South Node in Libra, which Libra is all about relationships. We have the Aries and the Libra axis. And so certainly this Gemini energy, the logical mind, maybe some of the healing, the healed, the healy type energy within yourself, within others, comes through in relationships. Relationships is pretty broad. So it could be anything to deal with the people that are in your reality. It could be new relationships that come in that trigger something for you. It could be new relationships that come in which bring to you more information, Gemini, give you some more ideas, give you some inspiration, give you some different ways of looking at things that are different than how you looked at them in the past, can be part of this energy. And then we have this square to my buddy Saturn up there in Pisces. And so with this energy, this is a first quarter square, which means there's tension in terms of taking action. It's not so much the consciousness piece, it's more of the taking action. And so with Saturn in Pisces, Saturn is adding some structure to the water energy. So if you think of water, it's the emotions, it's the intuitive side, it's all of that type of no borders, no boundaries. I'm going to be up in the ethers type of energy. And Saturn is like, let's make some container out of this, or there may be a little bit of restriction here because I'm trying to get you to address some things you maybe haven't addressed or have looked at, or I'm squeezing you down a certain path because this is going to be the path that you need to go down to gain some type of wisdom for yourself. And so with this aspect, the logical mind, the communication piece, there's a bit of tension in terms of how, if I'm getting squeezed and I'm feeling a little bit of a pinch and I'm feeling a little bit of tightness, or Saturn and Pisces can just be stepping into authority, could be stepping into spiritual authority, could be leveling up in some type of way too. It doesn't always need to be the restrictive thing. Saturn is the focused energy, it's the authority. So that could be part of this energy too. But it's like, how do I take that energy and how do I logically understand what are the next steps to take? And so the tension is always there to help move us forward, to help us refine and try to figure out What's the best move for us to make? What's the right words for me to use in this conversation? What is the best way for me to navigate the situation that I'm in right now? And because it's new energy, it's new moon energy, it's supportive of this Aries and Libra axis. It could certainly be in the realm of things that I want to learn, ways that I want to communicate to the people around me, things that I want to share, things that I want to be exposed to, all of those type of things. And if it's new energy, it could create a little bit of tension because it's new. It's not something that we're used to. The other thing that I'll touch on here is just all of this other energy here, aside from Mercury ruling this new moon. We also have Venus and we also have Jupiter that's sandwiching this energy here in this new moon. So Jupiter, which had just entered into Gemini, is the expander, and it is the traditional ruler of Pisces up here too. So in a way, it's supporting that. And Jupiter is always expanding. Jupiter is always going off and saying, how can I gain more of myself? How can I expose myself to more? How can I learn more? It's also definitely related to intuition and to getting information and to understanding things on a deeper level, understanding that we're more than just what's going on here and can be perceived by the five senses. It's a lot more than that. So Jupiter here in the sign of Gemini, exposed to a lot more information, and that's broad, and it's going to be different for each one of us. What type of information are you exposed to? Is it actually people in your environment? Is it books? Is it training classes? Is it videos? Is it getting stuff that just comes to you, that you're doing stuff through the day and you're like, oh, I had this realization that came to me, or I overheard somebody saying something, Gemini, and it was a message for me, that kind of stuff. We also have Venus. So we have Venus and Jupiter sandwiching this energy, and Venus is the symbol of relationships, the relationship to yourself, the relationship to other people, what resources you have to sustain your existence. It is, how am I taking myself and bringing it out to other people? How do I support myself is also Venus. And Venus is also a creative energy. It's also sensuality. It's also sexual energy. It's also tied to, how do I make this reality of mine more comfortable? A place that feels good for me to be in, a place where I can expand, Jupiter, and doing it in a Gemini way, which means exposed to different things, exposed to different ways of doing things, trying different things, going in different directions, maybe splitting off and doing two separate things might be part of this. So all of this energy here in Gemini, which is supporting this new moon, I feel the energy of, I want to say newness, which is kind of mundane newness, right? But it's more like there's a lighter, expansive, more encompassing, creative, fun, joyful, higher frequency type energy is what I'm feeling off of this new moon in Gemini. And that doesn't mean that it won't be experienced as, individually won't be experienced as a bit of a challenge or some tension or some difficulty, because remember, we still have, even though there's supportive aspects, still that Chiron, that Eris, that North Node, that Mars could be experienced in a way where it's not all unicorns and rainbows. It's not all fun and games, but ultimately, underneath that energy, it's really important when you experience things like this. And I kind of touched on this in my Eye of the Storm video a couple months ago. It's like to be really present and be really good with what's going on in your world right now, meaning to be present. because, and I'm not immune to this at all, is to get into a place where you have this vision or you have this idea of how things should be in your life, and that doesn't match up with what's actually going on. And that is what creates the dissonance. That's what creates the frustration. That's what creates the not feeling comfortable in your own space. And it's not to say that that created reality or the way that you feel things should be is invalid, or that you're not going to experience that, or it isn't part of your reality in some timeline. It's not to say that. It's just to say that you can understand that vision you have and where you feel you should be or what you think you should be experiencing. And that's cool. And you can acknowledge that, but then come back and say, I really love the present moment. I really love where I'm at now. And I understand that where I'm at now is part of this journey. It's part of where I'm supposed to be right now. And it's showing me things. And it's helping me to get to a place that feels a bit more aligned if it doesn't feel aligned now. It is helping me. It's always helping me. So how can I sink into this moment? How can I be there for myself at this period of time? What do I need? What do I feel would help me right now? And how can I really be thankful regardless of the situation? How can I really be thankful for where I am right now? Which is super important. And so with that, let me jump over to the Sabian symbols for this new moon in Gemini. So as soon as I pulled this up, I was like, what the heck? what am I looking at here? And so this is the Sabian symbol for this new moon mark between 16 and 17 degrees of Gemini. And so Dane Rudyard's explanation here, the head of a robust youth changes into that of a mature thinker. So the first thing that I thought of when I saw this was learning through osmosis. So what came to me was similar to what I talked about, is just getting information. And so this figure is leaned over, their head is on a book, which is on a platform, pulpit, I don't know what you would call it. And so that is the overarching energy that I got there, was learning. But it's almost like I know this information. It's almost like, so how I feel it is when we get exposed to information, or we are taught something, or we just really, we're exposed to it and we just know it. Meaning that somebody can start teaching us something and we're like, yep, I got it. Where somebody else in the class, like using the example of a classroom, they may really need to work to try to learn it. Where you step into the class and you're like, nope, I got it. It's almost like you're just exposed to it and you know it. And so for me, how I feel that why that is the case is because your soul on some level was exposed to that information before. And maybe it looked a little bit different, or in a different timeline, it was different, but the underlying energy of it is the same. And so there's a soul remembrance and you're like, whoa, I got it. Like, I just get this. I understand it. Like, think of like childhood prodigies, which, you know, they're really young and they can play the piano and they were never taught, right? That kind of stuff. That's what I was getting here with this image, is just like, I know it. I understand it. I get it. And so for you, it could actually be going to a class and learning. It could be just having a conversation with somebody. It's going to be different for all of us. But that's the energy that I got here. The other thing that I'm getting now is being overexposed to information. So the other thing that can happen too, especially with Gemini energy, is I start to take in too much information. I start reading books. I start listening to other people's opinions. I watch videos. I enroll in training classes. I look out into the world and I take in all of this information. And what can happen is you start taking in all of this information and you start losing your own inner knowing, your own inner truth, your own inner guidance. And so with Gemini energy, there's like this taking in information and then needing at some points in time, and maybe this is the marker for you with this new moon in Gemini, is enough is enough. I've taken in all of the information that I can take at this period of time. I need to be in my own space for a period of time so that I can allow all of this information that I've taken in to settle and remove what's no longer serving me, what does not resonate with me, that is just not useful for me at this period of time. And I'm only going to keep the information that's relevant, that feels right for me, and that I need at this period of time. And so there's this like closing down of additional information and saying, what do I know to be true? And really resting into that. And so that's the other thing that came to me here. And then there's the James Burgess piece here where he's talking about removing the emotion and really being logical and understanding the details of this thing or this project or this whatever I'm going to create, or you name it. It's taking it from a logical perspective and removing the emotion, removing the triggered responses, and saying here is the cohesive logical way that I'm going to explain this thing. And so that's what he offers here. I also looked up the ruler Mercury and the Sabian symbol for that. And I really like this one. This came up for me before, actually, when I did a personal reading for somebody as one of their symbols in their chart. And this is the 6 to 7 degree mark of Gemini, which is where Mercury is, which is trusting in life. And so when I see this image, it's an old-fashioned well, and it's simply, for me, you might get something different. For me, it's like you're always being fed. You're always being supplied for. You're always being cared for. You're never without, even if you feel like in the moment or in a certain circumstance that you are not sure where to turn, or you're not sure how this thing's going to work out or which way I should go. It's like there's this overarching energy, this multidimensional part of you, this higher self part of you, your guides. There's this 50,000 foot view energetically of this reality, and you're being held and you're being cared for. It's like a never ending well. There's always an energy exchange that's going on. And so you can think of it from the perspective of, like, I like to think of it from like an evolutionary astrology perspective, where you have this multi-life journey, and like sometimes you'll have a lifetime where you live in poverty, where things are a bit difficult and it's hard to survive. And you've had that experience. And so in subsequent lifetimes, maybe you have some of those same type fears that come up, and maybe some of the same type experiences happen. But as you progress in your soul's evolution, you'll eventually start to experience the other side of that, meaning that you're abundant and you have more than what you need, and you're able to have complete freedom from a financial standpoint. And so this is just using one example, but I look at this even from I look at it from a broader perspective. But even in this life experience, the more aligned you get and the more you're able to recognize and calm your nervous system, and like what I would call your ego, or your I don't like to kind of use lower self, but it's like the part of you that's not connected to the multidimensional part of you, to be able to connect in with the all of who you are and really trust that you are supported and sink into that trust. It's like this is a never-ending well. You're always going to be taken care of, even if your lower self feels fear, or it's not sure how things are going to work out. you're always being taken care of. And the more you attach to the lower frequency part of you, where there's the lower frequencies like fear and worry and fight or flight response and lack, and there's not enough, the more you attach to those frequencies, the more it amplifies this feeling that you're not taken care of and that you need to work hard and that you need to figure this out or life is just simply difficult. The more you can raise up into the higher frequencies and know that I see you, fear, I understand it. Thank you for trying to keep me safe, but I know I'm okay. This is going to work out. The solutions are going to appear. I'm going to have the awarenesses. Trust in yourself, trust in all of yourself, and know that it's going to work out. And so that's what I have for you here with this new moon in Gemini. As always, I appreciate you being here, appreciate your energy. Hopefully some of this was helpful, and I will see you again in another video. Take care.